It was over in an instant. A sideline glance, a missed fist bump. But in a blowout Lakers victory, that single moment detonated into the NBA's biggest controversy. Luka Doncic blew past his coach's outstretched fist. JJ Redick snapped, and in a flash the entire basketball world believed the Lakers were imploding from within. The truth, however, was far more complicated. This is the real story behind the game, the gesture and the firestorm that followed. The scene was set on February 28, 2026. The Lakers had traveled to San Francisco's Chase Center to take on the Golden State Warriors. Los Angeles was reeling, having lost 3 consecutive games to teams like Orlando and Phoenix, and the pressure was mounting on everyone from the front office to the bench. Luka Doncic, the superstar acquired from Dallas in a massive offseason trade, was supposed to be the final piece of the championship puzzle next to LeBron James. And it was JJ Redick now, in his second year as head coach, after taking over for Darvin Ham in 2024, whose job it was to make it all work. A 3-game skid wasn't part of the plan. But on this night, the game wasn't just a win, it was a statement. The final score read 129-101, a dismantling of the Warriors from the opening tip. Los Angeles' defense was suffocating, holding a veteran Steph Curry and the Warriors to a dismal sub-40% shooting night. With sharp ball movement and relentless drives to the basket, the Lakers carved out a huge halftime lead, turning the second half into little more than a formality. Doncic himself was brilliant, racking up 26 points and 8 assists in shortened playing time. He was a perfect storm of scoring and passing, the very combination that convinced the Lakers to trade for him. By mid-third quarter, the victory was secured, and Redick made the standard coaching move in a blowout. He started pulling his stars, including Doncic, and that's when it happened. The moment that would ignite a media frenzy. As Doncic ambled toward the sideline, Redick held out his fist for a bump, a gesture as common in basketball as a free throw. It's a simple sign of acknowledgement, meaning anything from good work to sit down. But Doncic walked right by it, either ignoring the gesture or dismissing it completely. He never broke stride, leaving his coach's hand hanging in the air. Was it an intentional slight? Or just a player lost in the zone? The world would debate it for days. But Redick's reaction was immediate. He wasn't about to let it go. He stalked Doncic down the bench, grabbed his arm, and began a conversation that was, to every eye in the arena, incredibly heated. Doncic took a seat, but Redick leaned in, closing the distance, and the intensity ratcheted up with every passing microsecond. A lip-reading analysis of the viral footage painted a tense picture. Redick allegedly started with, "What's your problem, huh? You just blew my hand off. What are you mad about?" Doncic's reply was a curt, "I didn't." Redick's command was sharp, "Sit down," to which Doncic fired back, "What yo?" The analyst noted the tone seemed fueled more by game-time adrenaline than actual malice. Redick finally turned and walked away, but Doncic shot up from the bench ready to pursue him until veteran teammate Jared Vanderbilt stepped in. Vanderbilt rose and physically blocked Doncic's path, placing himself squarely between his teammate and his coach. He clapped his hands with authority, his body language screaming a clear message. "It's done. Sit down. We're good." And with that, Doncic sat. The rest of the game played out quietly as the Lakers coasted to a win. But the clip of the confrontation was already escaping the arena and hitting the internet. One fan's phone had recorded the entire exchange, and within hours, it was ricocheting across every social media platform imaginable. A single post from NBA Courtside exploded, earning over 10,000 likes and 2 million views, while other accounts framed it as a full-blown feud. The narrative caught fire with parody accounts joking that Doncic's only birthday wish was to see Redick fired, as it was, ironically, Doncic's 27th birthday. Opinions flew from grave concerns over locker room chemistry to outright mockery. The one thing lost in the noise was the Lakers' dominant 28-point victory. For 5 days, the clip festered in the public mind, the speculation around it growing like a snowball rolling downhill. So by March 3, 2026, when the Lakers were set to host the New Orleans Pelicans, the story had taken on a life of its own. It had been dissected, memed, and blown so far out of proportion that many fans were convinced the Lakers were fractured beyond repair. Before the game, Redick stood before the media and confronted the issue directly, his demeanor surprisingly calm, almost amused by the chaos. A reporter finally asked the question on everyone's mind, how normal is an exchange like that? Redick's answer was instant and completely unfazed. "Yeah, I didn't think much of it at the time, to be honest with you. It wasn't a canned PR statement, it was genuine. He insisted that in the heat of the moment, it meant nothing, and he was certain Doncic felt the same way. To Redick, this was a perfect example of the internet manufacturing a crisis out of thin air. I don't think Luka did either. I mean, he and I have a great relationship. The choice of words was intentional. Not good, not fine. He used the word great, and then he drove the point home, making it deeply personal. I really value our relationship. By stating for the record how much he valued that connection, Redick was sending a clear signal to the media, the fans, and everyone in the league. This wasn't coach versus player. This was a partnership, and sometimes partnerships create friction. It's simply part of the game. He acknowledged these things happen not in every single game, but with alarming regularity. This was the most telling part of his entire statement. Reich confirmed that such heated exchanges are not an anomaly. They are a frequent occurrence. The only distinction here was the presence of a fan's camera pointed at just the right spot, at just the right second. In every NBA arena, night after night, coaches and players engage in passionate discussions over strategy substitutions and on-court choices. The vast majority of these conversations stay off the record, sometimes requiring a private follow-up with a player or even erupting between two teammates. Reich situated the blow-up within the larger context of high-stakes professional sports. He described it as the kind of thing that happens between coaches and players from one player to another among anyone who shares a bench and a common objective. He wasn't trying to sidestep responsibility by normalizing it. He was normalizing it because, in his mind, it was entirely normal. It's a competition. Two words that stripped away all the theatrical drama. Competition creates pressure. Pressure creates intense moments. And those moments eventually subside. That was his entire point. He explained that you had two individuals in that moment, both fiercely committed to winning a basketball game and getting perfectly aligned on strategy. That small phrase, "be on the same page about stuff," was the single most revealing clue from the whole press conference. Reich refused to define the confrontation as some kind of power play or a clash of personalities. Instead, he presented it as a strategic dispute between two people driven by the same desire to win. The argument was almost certainly about basketball tactics. Adjustments, defensive schemes, shot choices. Something tied to the game itself, not personal and not political. Reich then offered a crucial piece of his coaching philosophy, a detail that completely reframes the whole event. He said, frankly, he talks about having player-led teams constantly, and that he urges his guys to speak to him or his coaches to raise issues and state what they need. This is the absolute key to grasping why Reich seemed so calm. He has cultivated a team culture where players are not just allowed, but expected to challenge, to push, and to disagree. He doesn't rule with an iron fist from the bench. He encourages an open dialogue. If a player is angry about being pulled, Reich wants to know why. That is precisely what unfolded with Doncic. The coach was simply experiencing the culture he had intentionally created, and the internet had a meltdown over it. ESPN's Dave McMenamin confirmed Reich's side of the story on NBA Today, stating the outburst was a result of a 3-game losing streak, not a sign of some deeper conflict. As proof, McMenamin pointed to the Pelicans game itself, where Doncic and Vanderbilt were seen on the bench, joking, clearly making fun of their earlier clash and making their teammates laugh. That is not the sign of a locker room in turmoil. Joe Johnson, the former NBA player known as ISO Joe, also commented on the situation. He labeled the interaction as a perfectly routine event, particularly when a player is on a hot streak and gets taken out of the game. When you're in that rhythm, when the basket looks huge and the defense is helpless getting yanked by your coach, triggers a raw, instantaneous frustration. That doesn't signal animosity. It just means you are desperate to stay on the floor. The technical foul dilemma. But while that sideline video consumed social media, a different and much more severe issue had been escalating throughout the 2025-26 season. That issue was Luka Doncic's relentless collection of technical fouls. And this is where the idea of a suspension shifts from speculation to a very real possibility. It's not because the Lakers organization would choose to bench their star, but because the NBA rulebook could make it mandatory whether anyone in Los Angeles agrees or not. The rule is inflexible. According to NBA policy, any player who racks up 16 technical fouls in a regular season is hit with an automatic 1-game suspension and a $5,000 fine. After the 16th, every 2 additional technicals will cost you another 1-game suspension. This isn't a discretionary decision made by the league office. The commissioner doesn't get to weigh in on a case-by-case basis. The number is absolute. Hit the limit, and you sit. As of March 6th, 2026, Luka Doncic had 15 technical fouls. 15. He was just one more infraction away from being automatically suspended for a game. The sequence of events that brought him here shows just how serious the problem is. Technical number 14 occurred during the Lakers' 110-101 victory over the New Orleans Pelicans on March 3rd. He was teed up after arguing that the officials failed to call a lane violation on DeAndre Jordan during a free throw attempt. It wasn't a violent display or an aggressive act. It was just Doncic being Doncic, letting the referees know, with his voice and his gestures, that he thought they blew the call. That single contest resulted in 3 technicals against Lakers players in total, which pointed to a wider frustration with that night's officiating. Technical number 15 was assessed just 2 days later on March 5th in a 120-113 loss against the Denver Nuggets. That one was set off by what Doncic believed was a blatant missed foul call on a play involving Bruce Brown. Referee Redick Taylor gave him the technical after Doncic yelled profanities at the officiating crew. In that moment, Doncic was enraged. Enraged at the no call, enraged at the technical, and enraged at the vulnerable position he had just put himself in. Now, with a significant part of the regular season remaining, he was one emotional slip-up away from having to watch a game from the locker room in street clothes. Doncic has been here before. He has reached the 16 technical limit twice before in his career. In both instances, the NBA overturned the final technical after a review, which allowed him to narrowly escape the required suspension. That precedent gives the Lakers some hope, but it is far from a guarantee. The league has absolutely no duty to extend the same courtesy a third time, and the pattern of his behavior hasn't gotten any better. If anything, Doncic's readiness to go at officials has only escalated since he arrived in Los Angeles. With the lights burning their brightest and expectations reaching a fever pitch, the cost of one man's anger could derail an entire season. This is no isolated incident. The fuse on Doncic's temper has been burning short since his days in Dallas, erupting at officials over nearly every call that doesn't fall his way. His fury has spilled over into confrontations with rivals, culminating in a fiery post-game clash with Sacramento's Dennis Schroeder back in December of 2025 that got Schroeder a 3-game suspension. While Redick dismissed the Schroeder affair as a league issue, the destructive pattern of behavior is too glaring to overlook. The very same fire that fuels Doncic's genius on the court is the one that has him perpetually one outburst away from a suspension that could cripple his team when it matters most. At 37-24, the Lakers are clinging to the 6th spot in the brutal Western Conference, where every single contest is a battle. A single-game suspension for Doncic during this gauntlet of top-tier opponents could be the devastating blow that sends them from a home-court advantage to the chaos of the play-in tournament. The math is unforgiving, and the stakes are astronomical. But what makes the situation a ticking time bomb is when these meltdowns occur. They don't happen in the safety of a blowout victory. They explode in the heart of the tightest battles, precisely when Doncic feels the game has been stolen from him by a whistle. These are moments of pure competitive rage, where his impulse to fight eclipses any awareness of the catastrophic fallout. The crushing 7-point loss to the Nuggets was a perfect storm, a brutal defeat against a direct rival that could ultimately decide their playoff fate. It was in the heat of that inferno that Doncic earned his 15th technical foul. If the 16th comes under similar pressure, the resulting suspension could cost the Lakers everything. Everyone knows it, the coaches, the front office, and deep down Doncic himself. But the real question is whether knowing is enough to reprogram the volatile competitive wiring that has defined him since he was a teenage prodigy in Europe. The Lakers have made their choice. They stand with Redick, a fact the sensational headlines managed to stumble upon correctly. The organization is backing J.J. Redick. This isn't a move against Doncic, but a full-throated endorsement of his coach's demanding public and utterly unapologetic methods. Luka Doncic must master his emotions before the league decides to master them for him. A message sent before the Nuggets game on March 5th. Redick stood before a media scrum and confronted the technical foul problem with the same blunt force that characterized his playing days. He informed the press that Doncic is aware of how close he is and is actively trying to avoid another foul, a statement that landed with 2 distinct impacts. First, it signaled to the entire world that the issue was being handled internally, a direct conversation between coach and superstar. More crucially, it placed the full weight of responsibility directly upon Doncic's shoulders, with Redick refusing to blame referees or the league's rules. He didn't make excuses. He simply stated, "Doncic knows and Doncic is trying." The subtext was unmistakable. If and when technical number 16 arrives, the fault will belong to Doncic, and Doncic alone. A message the front office has echoed completely. Sources within the team confirm that Redick's coaching is built on a foundation of absolute accountability, and they insist that neither the sideline confrontation nor the looming suspension has poisoned the team's performance. The recent results back them up. Following the Warriors game, the Lakers dominated the Pelicans 110-101. They followed that with a 128-104 dismantling of Sacramento, where Doncic delivered 28 points and 9 assists. The team is thriving, and their star is delivering. From the organization's perspective, the heated exchange on the bench wasn't a crisis. It was a defining coaching moment. It was a head coach demanding greatness from his best player, and that player responding with a dominant performance on the court. The importance of this unified front cannot be exaggerated, especially in the supercharged power dynamics of the modern NBA, where Doncic is one of the 5 or 6 most gifted players on the planet. He is a 5-time All-Star, a constant MVP threat, and the very reason the Lakers blew up their roster to bring him to Los Angeles. In most franchises, a player of that stature possesses enough leverage to systematically undermine, isolate, or even orchestrate the firing of a head coach. The league has seen this story play out time and time again, with stars like James Harden forcing his way out of multiple franchises. Jimmy Butler did the same in Minnesota and later Miami, joining countless other superstars who decided the coach was the problem and acted on it. But the Lakers are refusing to let that narrative take root publicly, reinforcing Redick's authority and his message about the technical fouls to establish an ironclad hierarchy. The coach dictates the standard, and every single player, including the franchise's centerpiece, is expected to meet it. This is a bold and deliberate declaration of culture. To his credit, Doncic seems to have embraced it, confirming publicly that there is no lingering animosity between him and his coach. Privately, both men have reportedly dismissed the exchange as a normal part of the game, something that happens and is already forgotten. Doncic's on-court brilliance since that moment has been undeniable, but his production was never the question. His composure is the ticking clock. He can pour in 30 points a night and still be the one who sabotages this team if that 16th technical foul comes at the worst possible second in a game they absolutely cannot lose. In a critical stretch of the season that demands his presence, the Lakers have drawn a line in the sand and ordered their superstar to control his fire. They declared that message to the world, and now the burden falls entirely on Doncic to prove he is capable of doing it. Forget the viral outburst and the foul count for a moment, and a much larger, more critical story comes into focus. This is a team staring down one of the most volatile chemistry experiments in the modern NBA. For 6 years, Luka was the system in Dallas. Every single play was born and died in his hands. He initiated the offense, he executed the plan, and he shouldered the consequences of every shot. The Mavericks sculpted their entire identity around his singular genius to command the ball-dissect defenses and conjure magic from thin air. That power defined him, but in Los Angeles, the throne is already occupied. LeBron James is still here. Coach Reich's philosophy is a symphony of motion floor spacing and collective decision-making, a system that empowers all 5 men on the court to read and react, a stark contrast to Dantic's mastery of isolation and methodical control. These two styles are not oil and water, but forging them into a weapon requires a sacrifice from everyone involved. It demands an unshakable patience, the kind of bond that can only be built through shared victories and agonizing defeats. The eruption on the sideline was merely a symptom of that process. A brief, fiery glimpse of the immense pressure building inside this roster overhaul. The fan base on X fractured instantly, with some seeing the meltdown as a sign of a doomed partnership. The comments poured in, predicting that Luka and JJ simply couldn't coexist and that Dantic's exit was inevitable if Reich remained at the helm. But others, like the user hero of the day, pointed out the confrontation happened in the third quarter, and that, by the final buzzer, Dantic and Reich were sharing a laugh. This split reaction perfectly captures the way fans consume the league's dramas. Some see a single spark and scream that the entire franchise is burning to the ground. Others understand that fire is what fuels the engine of a championship contender. And within this specific fire, the actions of Jared Vanderbilt cannot be overlooked. As Dantic shot up from the bench to escalate the conflict, it wasn't a fellow superstar or a team executive who intervened. It was the ultimate role player, a grinder, whose name rarely lights up the social media feeds. He planted himself squarely between his teammate and his coach, clapped his hands with authority, and commanded Dantic to sit back down. That is the act of a soldier who holds enough respect in the barracks to quell a dispute between the two highest-ranking officers on the team. It's a testament to the culture Reich is building, and the image of Vanderbilt and Dantic joking about it during the Pelicans game says it all. The laughter echoing down the bench confirmed the truth: the foundation is solid. There is no internal collapse. There is no civil war. There is only a team that weathered a storm and emerged stronger. It's also crucial to place this blow-up in the wider context of NBA history, which immediately deflates the manufactured sense of crisis. Clashes like this are a rite of passage for nearly every legendary player and coach this sport has ever seen. Phil Jackson weathered titanic clashes with both Kobe Bryant and Shaquille O'Neal while forging championship dynasties. Greg Popovich famously tore into Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, and every other icon to wear the silver and black, and they only revered him more for it. The sheer pressure of an 82-game season, the stakes, the adrenaline, the exhaustion makes outbursts an absolute certainty. The test has never been about avoiding conflict. It's always about whether the men involved are strong enough to move past it. For Dantic and Reich, every piece of visible evidence screams that they already have. The relentless 24-hour news cycle supercharged by social media algorithms has warped our perception of the game. We now live in an era where a 10-second video from the bench can ignite a bigger firestorm than the actual 96 minutes of basketball. The Lakers' soul-crushing 28-point annihilation of the Warriors, a victory that screamed of their title aspirations, was instantly demoted to a side note beneath the drama of a heated exchange. That skewed focus says far more about our sports viewing habits in 2026 than it does about the Lakers' internal chemistry. The technical foul problem, however, has not been moved past. That danger is immediate, and it is very real. Dantic's constant battle with the officials is hardwired into his competitive DNA. It isn't a switch that can be flipped off by a coach's plea or a memo from the front office. It is the same volcanic energy that fuels his generational talent. The ultimate test for the Lakers is figuring out how to harness that inferno without letting the self-sabotaging eruptions burn them down. Sitting on 15 technicals with weeks left to play, his rope has run out. The Lakers front office, for their part, have navigated this minefield with surgical precision, backing their coach without isolating their superstar. They acknowledged the technical foul crisis publicly, but did so without publicly humiliating Dantic. And then they let the scoreboard do the talking with commanding victories that sent a clear message: we are not perfect, but we are still working. The sideline argument wasn't a crisis, it was just noise. The technical foul count is something far more sinister. It is a ticking clock, and no one, not Reich, not the front office, and not even Dantic himself, seems to know how to stop it. The clock on Luka Dantic's season is ticking down, and only two things can stop it: a referee's whistle or his own self-control. So no, the Lakers haven't taken him off the court, but the league office is about to. And if that suspension finally drops, it won't be because the Lakers organization sat on its hands. They've had the hard conversations behind closed doors. They've stood by their coach in public, sending a message so clear the entire league could hear it. Now the only question left is whether Dantic can summon a level of discipline that has always abandoned him in the moments that demand it most. His otherworldly talent has never been the issue, his volatile temper has. And with 15 technical fouls already on his record and the playoffs looming, the answer will ultimately decide the fate of the Lakers' entire season.